Welcome back everyone. In this video, I want to talk about music in Islam and contrast it with music in Christianity. Now, I'm not really talking about certain bands or certain kinds of genres of music in Islam and Christianity, but rather the idea of music itself. So, as many of you may know, or many of you perhaps don't, in Islam, music is generally considered to be some form of haram, and that means you're not allowed to listen to the top 10 in the charts. Allowed to listen to whatever you might hear on the radio.
Goodbye! I wipe it off that toast, the last brother this time. Everything's pretty, bless my name.
And in some cases, you're not even allowed to listen to what you hear in the supermarket or a shop. Now, as with all the Muslims in Islam, there's different degrees of strictness. Some people take this as being very strict. They go right down to the level of instruments. They say these instruments, these percussion instruments, these wind instruments, they are haram. You cannot have them in any circumstance. Then there are others that say, well, as long as the music has a decent message, perhaps even an Islamic message, then perhaps it's permissible. But scholars are pretty much unanimous that music is more haram than it is halal. Let's take a look at a recent interview with the legendary and infamous Islamic scholar, Dr. Yasser Qadhi, and see what his view is when he is being pushed by a fellow Muslim to explain why Islam holds this very odd view about music. Let's take a look.
Okay, let us go with the last question in the Aqidah matters, actually about the music.
The distinction has been made between the sounds that come from hitting something versus the sounds that come from blowing into something. This distinction comes from the earliest, and some would even say the Sahaba, but for sure, without any doubt, this distinction is found in the Tabi'un. So then the issue comes then about what is called wind instruments, right?
Yeah, what's
instruments
the problem to make a voice like this and to make this is haram and this is halal?
So music in Islam is quite a divisive issue, and it's not really one that scholars seem to want to address, because I'm going to be honest here, this is my opinion. I think this is embarrassing. I think the idea that in today's age, music just as a category, as a type of thing, is haram, it's banned, it's forbidden, it shouldn't be done, it's against God's will, is fundamentally just asinine. If I think of one thing that would put me off Islam and would mean that I would never consider Islam, it would probably be the idea that I could never listen to music. I think there are so many good things that can come from music. Even worship can come from music, for one thing, but let's take that aside and leave out the religious element and just say music as a kind of thing. It is a innate, natural, wonderful expression of creativity. If you don't have music, I really generally struggle to think about how cultures would look. And you know what, this kind of goes on to a bigger thing where you look at the things that Islam prohibits. You have music, you can't have music, it's haram. Dancing, in many instances, it's haram. Alcohol, in many instances, well, completely basically, it's haram. Pork, it's haram. So bacon sandwiches are a big no-no. These things are like some of life's greatest pleasures, and yet they're struck out as being inherently evil. And in all honesty, I cannot understand how that's the case. You might be a Muslim watching this and you might think this is a bit odd because you perhaps have lived your life and never had these things. But I can promise you this, both from my experience and from the experience of, well, not everyone, I guess, but most people that I engage with, dancing, they like alcohol, beer and wine. They like music and pork and all these things that are supposed to be haram. And they can enjoy them in a way that's healthy and good and positive to communities and to culture and to art and to entertainment. If you take all that away, I feel that that is in and of itself actually an evil act. I can't justify that. Now, don't get me wrong, right? Anyone who's intelligent knows or anyone who's really just experienced any part of life knows that there are serious downsides to alcohol. We know this, we've seen this. I was gonna say there's downsides to dancing. I guess if your dad gets up on the dance floor, I guess that's a downside to dancing. But for most of these things, the good outweigh the bad by like overwhelming amounts. And so it just seems irrational to any layman, any normal person who learns about Islam, who learns these things that are forbidden, to understand why they're forbidden. Why did God think that music was bad? That just seems bizarre to me. Why did God think that pork was bad? Not just as a ceremonial law, as a way of identifying yourself as a community that belongs to God, but rather as a general forever law that God has established because there is something about it he doesn't want you to engage in. There's another thing, has immense health benefits in many cases, particularly with wine. There's been studies that have been done on that. People are aware that alcohol makes people more sociable and more engaging and willing to have, again, a kind of community together. And also, it generally tastes good. If Islam were true, I would expect something like, you shouldn't take these things in excess, or if you prohibit these things, it should be because you are trying to separate yourself from others and show a distinctness. And I think if Islam was a bit more honest, well actually, not honest, but if they would just say, the reason we don't engage in dance, music, alcohol, is not because there's anything wrong with these things, but just because God has decided that we ought to act in this way so that we can be identifiable. I think that would make more sense to me. But as we're about to see in the next clip, that's not the track that many scholars take, at least not Dr. Yasser Qadhi. And to be honest, from my experience, just many layman Muslims also have this opinion that music is just bad. There isn't anything good here. Everything that music touches somehow is corrupted, and zina comes in and all these things come in and just bad. So let's play this clip.
Is an industry of filth and fahsha. This is, you cannot deny this. The music industry around the globe, as the default, as the asl.
Explain this more, Sheikh.
What is the music industry about? It is about zina, it is about haram relationships, it is about nakedness and videos of this manner, suggestiveness, lewdness. It is about all types of shahawat and whatnot.
هذه قولا واحدا, just
the music industry, ya Sheikh. The music industry.
Just I wanted to explain with details.
You cannot deny this.
Okay, that's fine.
So when somebody comes and wants to say music is halal, right? Ya akhi, open your eyes and look at this reality. How can you just make this blanket statement without looking at the waqi'?
No.
Right? And then you have the opposite view as well, that music is haram, and then they consider every single thing, including sometimes alat al-tarb, or the percussion instruments, without even thinking things through. No. So my position, Shaykhana, is that these types of industries should not be encouraged. They should not be encouraged. No. And there's a reason why, from the beginning of time, the people of ilm and taqwa, the people of ikhlas and zuhd and ibadah, by and large, we did not find them involved in this type of industry. There's a reason, Sheikh.
No.
That reason is that these instruments, the least that you can say about them, forget the word haram and makruh right now, just the least you can say about them, these types of instruments, what they do is they bring about a level of desire or shahwa or lust, right? And one wonders, what is the fa'idah of bringing about that lust when it's happening in public? And that is why, from the beginning of time, these instruments are associated with nudity, with women and men dancing. This is beyond any one culture. Think about it. Why is it that this industry, in every civilization, from the beginning of time, is always associated with khamr and with zina and with women dancing and with nudity? Why? What is the relationship? The relationship is, forget haram and makruh. These sounds will automatically, you are flirting with your own shahawat. You are provoking in a manner.
So according to Sheikh Yasser Qadhi, there are elements of music that naturally bring out the lust that you have in your heart, that makes you want to do zina, that makes you want to commit all these awful sins and go out and dance with naked women and all these odd things. Just a horrible blanket way of talking about things. And the odd thing is during this interview, he tries to take a sort of middle ground of saying, well, not everything is halal, as in not all music is halal, but also not all music is haram. There are special exceptions that can be made. But if there are special exceptions that can be made, then why does he lump all music in the music industry in one category and say it's all bad? Why can he say that inherently it promotes zina, inherently it promotes all these things? I think obviously it doesn't. I think he's being very hypocritical there. Music can bring out the joy in life. Music can bring out the genuine aspects of the human experience that most people go through in their life, whether it's marriage or childbirth or loss and suffering or guilt or shame or love and romance. It can be anything that the artist wants it to be, and that draws people in because they find something that is meaningful and is reflected in their own experiences. When you take that away, life is vague and in all honesty, a shell. I don't think it's sincere anymore. It's like hiding things you know are real because it's somehow too much to deal with. And I think Islam has that view. It's such a domineering position of people's lives that there really isn't any. Do Muslims have this naive view that dancing is like all done like naked or with very little clothing, and strip clubs or nightclubs, or people dance at weddings, people dance at parties, people dance to celebrate all sorts of things that are just genuinely good. And the idea that you're driving in your car, you listen to the radio, you hear a bit of Kylie Minogue or something, and you decide, well, man, I've just gotta go out and have some zina. I think it's just silly. I mean, I think that's honestly silly. No one would do this. No Muslim would do this, right? Because to say that is to belittle Muslims. Like, the same thing goes for women must wear the hijab to be modest and to fulfill what Allah has revealed in the Quran. And if they don't wear the hijab, then Muslim men just could not help themselves. They would be aroused beyond all belief by the sight of hair, and they would have to jump on these Muslim women, and there'd be no escape. It's like, well, have you seen what the West has done? Like, the West has had women exposing their hair for a long time, and yeah, it's pretty much fine. I've never known a man who's ever been tempted and lost to his temptations because of female hair. In any situation. And to be honest with you, the idea of that is, imagine you're talking with your friends, and one of your friends says, oh, I saw this girl last night. Yeah, we were at a bar or a pub or something like that, and so beautiful, and you know what, I just couldn't help myself. I basically jumped on her, all because she had such lovely hair. Would you really buy that? Like, that guy would be ridiculed to death. And yet the Islamic position is exactly that. It makes no sense. It's not rational. It doesn't take into account human nature. Rather, it's some sort of perversion of it. Human nature is to love and to live and to worship and to glorify in the fullest extent that you can. And music is part of that, dancing is part of that, and alcohol, in all honesty, is a part of that. You look at ancient cultures, you look at Iran and how it used to be. They used to make Shiraz wine. Like, these guys loved their wine. There's even evidence of early Islamic communities that drank wine and they enjoyed wine because they understood the value and the benefits of sensible drinking. It brought communities together. A great way of glorifying and honoring people as well, if not God, if not any kind of victory or celebration or success. The fact that this is even an issue in Islam is beyond me. I don't really understand it. I think it's good things for absolutely no reason. And they try and justify the reasons. Dr. Yasir Qadhi did. You know, it's inherently played with these things. And he's correct that the Western music industry in particular is dominated by these. There's no question of that. It's just, why does that matter? Like, for example, film has the same problem. Does that mean you shouldn't watch films? The film's haram? You imagine sort of like having to discipline your kids because you came home and you saw them watching Toy Story 3 on TV. They were committing radical haram behavior there, and you have to discipline them. It's not just entertainment, but expression from the human experience. It's just haram as a blanket term, or just for the majority of it anyway, as Yasir Qadhi seems to imply, is just asinine and bizarre. Just as a Christian, I think the best way I can kind of summarize why this is so strange to me, and probably to most people watching this, even if you are a Muslim, I think if you're a Muslim, there's a good chance you probably don't have the most extreme view on this because you were probably brought up in the West, is that there are clear examples of things that are actually just good. I mean, you have like, nasheed, you have things that are music that even from an Islamic perspective are good. So why can't you just take that same thing and just rationalize that it would also apply to others? If you have a song that's about loving your wife and it has percussion instruments and wind instruments, is that bad? Okay, you have a song about glorifying celibacy. Is that bad? And being chaste until you find a partner and you get married. You have a song about standing up for what's right, commanding the good and forbidding the wrong. How about a song about donating to charity? If you're a Muslim and you do genuinely think that music, generally speaking, is haram, I would love to hear your explanation as to why you can't do this kind of thing. Why is it that all music is haram, and even the things that are clearly good by artists who have a good intention, who have a good message that is compatible, if not identical, with the Quran and the Sunnah, why is it that you still have to say it's haram? Why don't you just say, look, it's obviously a good thing in life. If people are dancing to a song about loving your neighbors or loving your partners, your wife, whatever it might be, can you honestly tell me you think that's bad? This is bizarre to me. And if they're drinking wine but they're doing so sensibly, is that bad? Doesn't seem like it. It seems that they're now more relaxed, they're more capable of coming together and dancing together to a lovely message. Perhaps they're celebrating some good occasion, like the birth of a child. Like, how is any of these things bad? I think, in honesty, I would love to hear Muslims reply in the comments, because in honesty, I can't rationalize this. the more I look into Islam, the more it seems that there are just things that are not rationalized. It's just, and in honesty, in my view, just somewhat evil. I don't think a loving God would do that. I think a loving God wouldn't create such beautiful things and then forbid them with seemingly no intent purpose. And so when a purpose has to be derived, not for identity, not for community. Christianity, on the other hand, and for Muslims who don't know this, we live by a virtue ethic. So we don't have explicit rules as such, although you could argue there are some that are binding that we hold to today. But we don't derive our do's and don'ts just from these rules and laws. Rather, our understanding of morality and what we should do and what we do based on periods of time is by what we consider virtuous, right? So for example, love is a virtue. So we are to act in a way that is loving. Now that changes depending on time, place, things that you have available to you and whatnot. But the principle is always the same, and for that reason it's timeless. We are to be self-denying in the sense that there are things that we could have. We could all spend all of our money and just buy lots of food, delicious food, maybe just live on McDonald's for a year or something, but it wouldn't be virtuous, because we're giving all these pleasures to ourselves and we're not giving to others when we could do. We're being foolish with our money, for example. These things are virtues. So denying yourself pleasures is a virtue. Loving others is a virtue. Self-sacrifice actually is a virtue. If you can give your life for your family, that would be good. If you could give your life for others in a loving way, that would be good. And this is why you can see stories sometimes in the news of someone doing a heroic act by willingly give their own life for others so others could live rather than him. Now you might think, well, okay, that's quite obvious. Yeah, that's a lovely thing, you know, gave his own life up, others lived, that's great. But historically, that's actually not been the way the world looks at things. Historically, most people self-sacrifice not as noble and good, but as foolish. You gave your life just for some others. When you die, you don't even see the rewards of your deed. They thought it was just foolish and bizarre, because ultimately pre-Christian, pre-Jewish societies largely had a paganistic view of the weak are not inherently valuable because they contribute little, or worse yet, they're a net drain, but the strong are valuable because they do contribute, and therefore the strong, given all the great things in society, and then the weak should have basically everything taken from it. With Christianity, we value the weak more than the strong. Baby is worth more than the mother and the father, which if you think about it is an interesting idea. Like culturally, that's kind of abnormal. And through these virtue ethics, we understand that music itself isn't bad, any more so than kissing someone is bad, eating food is bad, going to McDonald's is bad. And the reason why is because it depends on context. Why did you kiss that person? Did you give you gave your gran a kiss or something? Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. But did you kiss another woman who's not your wife? Alcohol isn't explicitly bad, but what are you using it for? Are you drinking alcohol to get absolutely inebriated and you're now engaged in zina? Well then, it's bad, quite clearly. But are you using alcohol because it's your friend's birthday and you want to be more sociable so you can engage and honor that person's birthday? Well, clearly that's good. This is what we mean by virtue ethics, and it's the same that applies to music. Music isn't inherently good or bad. It's not simple enough, and Yasakari kind of hints at this when he says that it's not clearer to say haram or halal, but rather it's somewhere in between. Well, in a sense, music isn't good or bad. Rather what it is a medium of expression. It expresses the human soul. And for that, it could be good. It could be for good purposes. But we also know it could be for bad things. And we've all seen, you know, the adultery promoting lustful things that Hollywood and just big music industry pumps out. We all know that, and we all know that's bad. But we also know the beautiful parts of music. Generally good things that are loving, that encourage things, that are either explicitly religious, but sometimes even not, because religion extends beyond into all things. So it isn't just those that directly talk about God or Jesus or Muhammad or whatever it might be, but just songs that talk about how good it is to stay as a family and to trust each other and to not separate. How good it is to rely on those that need you, and how good it is to rely on those who need you just as much in return, and to build meaningful relationships. Like, these aren't religious messages, but they're good messages, and everyone knows they are. And because of that, they kind of are religious. I mean, you don't have to see it in that kind of light, but I think it's very naive to think this is good, this is bad. Context matters. And so for that reason, I think the Christian worldview is the superior one. Christ did not come to give us a set of laws, but rather to fulfill the law himself and to show us through the examples in the Sermon on the Mount, for instance, that we can reason about the things that are good and the things that are bad. And his behavior is a light on the hill for us to see and for us to observe and to model. We are to love our neighbor. We have to forgive our enemies. And through this, we can express love and we can show virtue to people and not just rely on false piety by following arbitrary, nonsensical, irrational evil, I would say. Come to Jesus Christ. God bless you all. I hope you have a great day. Take care.